Read your notes. That was an odd intro. My chair keeps squeaking. So there's no written text. The further and I don't know what to do. So yeah. Hi guys, and welcome back to Azaria's Place. It's a Disney week. I really had to fight the urge to do a second theater week in a row just because we had some very exciting announcements happen recently. So I will save that for next week. But this week, it's a Disney week, and anyone who knows me knows how much I love fairy tales. I honestly can't get enough. My boyfriend got me into this podcast called Myths and Legends, which is basically like origin stories of myths, lores, and legends. And I love it so much. And so today I thought it'd be really cool to do an origin story. So today we're talking about Sleeping Beauty. I mean, I don't know why I chose Sleeping... Actually, that's a lie. I do know why I chose Sleeping Beauty. I just feel like I've done so much Snow White content with Sim Saturday. We're still at her generation, as well as the Snow White's Prince video. So I think that we just need a break from Snow White. So like I said, I'm a big lover of fairy tales. And if you love Disney, you probably should or might know that most of their stories are not original, meaning that they come from different source material from different places, countries, whatnot. I'm not sure if I talked about this in my Once Upon a Time video that I did a couple weeks ago, but I thought that season 7 was super clever, and one of the main reasons was the fact that we have different versions of the same story. And what I love about this, and I guess sometimes maybe it's just my love of the arts, it really makes me love history in some kind of weird way. And so I do love just digging and doing the research process. So I really do love finding and going down the rabbit hole and even finding things that I didn't know. I have read the origin stories for Sleeping Beauty before, and I even found out some new information when I was researching for this video. So I'm excited to share that with you. So some of you who know Disney films probably know that they're based on fairy tales. And so I wanted to share the origin story today of Sleeping Beauty. And when I was looking, many sources will accredit the first origin story to Perrault, and that is indeed false. Perrault's version is actually one of the later, I guess, in terms of how many versions there are, it is one of the later versions. And anyone who does research will probably know that the further back you go, the harder it is to find information and a clear-cut answer. So the dates on some of this information was very different, and I'll try to point that out as I go along. Also, just for the interest of time, I'm only going to be telling one version of the story, but if you like this and you want me to keep doing more, there are, like I said, multiple versions of Sleeping Beauty, so I might get to tell other ones later down the line, but we're only going to be telling one version, so once I get the history done, I will tell you which version you will be hearing today. So the earliest version of Sleeping Beauty was actually found in a Catalan manuscript that goes by this name that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. As far as this version, I could not really pinpoint a date that seemed accurate / that matched with any other resources. So all I know about this version is that it was produced sometime around the medieval times and era, but I don't really know an exact date for anybody who's really curious. And the next dated version of Sleeping Beauty was found in Perseforest, which is a prose romance, and that dates around 1330 to 1344. However, apparently the first publishing date was in 1528. This actually consists of 6 books and was written in French. The next retelling of Sleeping Beauty actually is the origin story you're going to hear today, and it is Giambattista Basile's Sun, Moon, and Talia. And this version was released in 1634. Perrault's version actually follows this with the French title that translates to The Sleeping Beauty in the Woods. Lastly, it's followed by the Grimm brothers' Little Briar Rose. So like I said, today I'll be telling Giambattista Basile's version of Sun, Moon, and Talia. He actually published this fairy tale in a collection of fairy tales in his book Pentamerone, which was written in Italian. So like I said, today you'll be hearing Sun, Moon, and Talia, so I'm excited to jump into that story. I've reread the story so many times. It's honestly a very short read. I will post a link below for anyone who wants to read it. It also has links to the Charles Perrault version as well as the Grimm brothers version, and maybe possibly another, but I love finding out the origins of fairy tales. I think it's really fun. I nerd out about this kind of stuff. I will just preface this with saying that original stories of fairy tales can be dark, and they have a really interesting side to them. They definitely have moments in them that are more than questionable, and so I want to just first say that I don't condone all the things happening in this, but again, it's just an origin story. I did not write the story, but I do think it's just interesting to know the history behind things. And I know that a lot of us have heard the term Disneyed, meaning that Disney takes a dark or more mature, or whatever you want to call it, theme or story, and takes it and makes it more family friendly. So, for example, anyone who knows any fairy tale, you'll know what I mean. And when you hear Sun, Moon, and Talia, you will also understand what I mean, that Sleeping Beauty was Disneyed. So the story starts as follows. So there was once a great lord who named his daughter Talia, and he sent 4 wise men and astrologers to predict his daughter's future. And they predicted that she would come to great danger because of a splinter of flax. So therefore, the father then forbade any use of flax, hemp, or any materials of that sort to be brought into his home. So that way she could escape her fate, essentially. So one day, Talia grew up to be beautiful, and again, Sleeping Beauty. She's not really described by much other than her beauty. And she passes this old woman who is spinning, and Talia obviously had never seen a spindle or anything like this, so she's curious about it. She asks the old woman to come to her, and she decides to stretch the flax, and of course she then gets a splinter under her nail. And upon this happening, she falls dead onto the ground. The old woman is obviously very worried that she just runs away, hopefully to find help. It doesn't really specify what she was doing. It just says that she keeps running down the stairs and that she is still running. So I guess she just never came back. So it just so happens that at this time a king passes by, and one of his falcons flies into her window. And when it does not respond to him upon his call, he decides to then get a ladder and climb up, and he finds Talia lying there. And it says, and I quote, that he lifted her in his arms, carried her to a bed, where he gathered the first fruits of love. Very polite way of putting what he actually did. But, alas, he returns to his own kingdom, kind of slightly just, I guess, forgetting about her. But then 9 months later, Talia gives birth to a son and a daughter. Of course, she doesn't awake. In some versions, she does awake at the birth of her own children, but in this version, she does not. In this version, there are 2 fairies that attend to her children, and upon not being able to receive any milk, they then decide to suck on her fingers, and they actually end up sucking out the splinter and flax. Of course, she then awakes, obviously very confused, but she sees she now has these 2 children that she loves more than anything. And she notices that there's a table made, and obviously someone must have been attending to her new home in the woods. In the meantime, the king remembers that Talia exists and decides to then go hunting. So then he returns to where she is staying, and he finds her awake with her 2 children. And so he fills her in on what's happened and promises to come back and take them to the palace with him. But get this. The king's wife starts to suspect something because her husband's gone out hunting and hasn't returned for a few days. And so she decides to call upon their secretary and ask for all the information, including who her king is in love with. The queen then sends for Talia to send her children, and then when they arrive, she demands the cook to cook them into a meal so that the king can eat them. However, the cook, being a decent human being, decides to give them to his wife to look after in the meantime, and he cooks the king lamb instead. So while the king is eating, the queen is like, yes, you are eating your own. And he's not understanding at all. She keeps repeating this. And he's like, of course it's my own. You didn't bring anything here. And I guess that means that he was the one hunting. So therefore, yes, it is his own hunting food that he brought home from hunting. The queen then invites Talia after believing their children to have been eaten by the king. And she says some very mean things to her that I'm not going to say on the internet. She's like, hey, you have taken my husband from me. So she decides that she's going to make a fire, or have someone build a fire, to then burn Talia to death. And I guess to buy some time, Talia is like, can I at least remove my clothing? She removes garment by garment and screams after each garment is removed. And then finally, I guess the king overhears this and then comes in and questions the queen, and the king still doesn't realize that the queen thinks that he ate his own children. So she finally is like, hey, you're a little slow here, but you ate your own children. So of course he's maddened by this, very upset, and he demands that the queen be burned in this fire that he built for Talia, along with the secretary that helped her find out all this knowledge about Talia, as well as the cook who cooked his children. The cook admits to saving his children, so he is spared. And then Talia and the king get married and live happily ever after. And the story ends with, those whom fortune favors find good luck even in their sleep. I don't know about you guys, but it's a bit odd. It is a bit odd that good luck is how we are describing this, but I didn't write it, so yeah, but that is the origin story. That is Sun, Moon, and Talia. If you did not catch that, or hear if I did not say that, Sun and Moon are actually the names of the children, and Talia obviously is the princess. So let me know if you guys liked hearing this origin story or not. Like I said, there's so many different versions of Sleeping Beauty that I could tell all 4 of them on this channel and still not have scratched the surface of origin stories. It's always really interesting just to see how these stories came from such a dark place and then were Disneyed in a sense. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments if you want to hear more origin stories. If not, I will probably still be reading them. So as you guys know, it's a Disney week, so that means we have a Disney fun fact today. So we are keeping it all in the family today, and we are talking about Snow White as far as our Disney fun fact. And today's Disney fun fact was that it was the last animated Disney feature fairy tale movie until The Little Mermaid. So initially, Sleeping Beauty was not a box office success, and that caused the studio to put a halt really on doing movies about fairy tales. And so The Little Mermaid didn't happen until 30 years after Sleeping Beauty. And now on to the show tune spotlight. So also trying to keep in theme, again, lyrics have nothing to do with my song choice, but titles do. So I'm actually going to go with Stars and Moon. I know it's not the same thing, but Sun and Moon, Stars and Moon, potato, potato. So I decided to go with Stars and Moon from Songs for a New World, and its music and lyrics are all by Jason Robert Brown. It's actually a song cycle. It's a really good show. It actually never went to Broadway. It did premiere off Broadway though in 1995. So give that a listen. It has really amazing songs. I love Jason Robert Brown. He's one of my favorite composers. I think as far as a lyricist, he is one of the most clever people ever, and slightly underrated, I think, as a lyricist. Maybe that's just my opinion, but I think he's kind of a genius when it comes to writing lyrics, and I'm gonna stop before I turn this into a theater week video without trying to. So that is all I have for you guys today. Make sure you tune in this Sim Saturday where we continue the Disney Princess 10 Generation Challenge. We are still at Snow White's generation, and it's going somewhere. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next Thursday or this Sim Saturday. Thank you again, and be kind.